You deleted the chats. You blocked the number. You told everyone, including yourself, that it was over. That this is what Allah wanted. That this was obedience. But here's what you're too afraid to say out loud. You don't feel peace. You feel hollow. And there's this ache in your chest, quiet but persistent, like your soul knows something your mind won't admit. What if letting go wasn't the answer? What if Allah never asked you to close this door in the first place? You told yourself it was over. You did everything right. You unfollowed. You blocked. You deleted the photos. You whispered, "Ya Allah, help me move on." And for a while, it felt like maybe He did. You stayed busy, distracted, productive. You convinced yourself this was healing, that this was strength, that this was finally over. But then the silence hit. Not the peaceful kind that wraps your heart in relief. No, the kind of silence that shows up at 2 a.m. When your chest feels heavy, when the air in your room feels thick, like you're breathing in a decision your soul never agreed to. You're not crying over memories. You're not aching because you want them back. You're aching because something feels wrong. Like your soul took a turn it wasn't supposed to. You've been praying. You've been doing the right things. Working on yourself. Trying to open your heart to something new. Trying to trust the process. But deep inside, you feel spiritually disconnected. Your du'as feel dry. Your Ameen? It's not rising, it's sinking. And this is the part no one talks about. The part people brush off with shallow advice. Sometimes, the act of letting go for Allah isn't truly for Allah. It's fear. Fear of repeating pain. Fear of judgment. Fear of looking weak for holding on. So you told yourself it was haram. You labeled it attachment. You called it a test. You called it obedience. But what if it wasn't any of those? Because letting go is easy. When the person was clearly wrong for you. Toxic. Forbidden. When there were red flags screaming run. But what about when they weren't? What about when you let go, not because they were bad, but because you got scared? Scared it wouldn't work. Scared Allah wouldn't make it easy. Scared that maybe you weren't enough. So you walked away. And now you're here, in this strange in-between place. Not holding on. But not moving forward either. You're stuck in a chapter you never meant to close. Your chest aches not because of heartbreak, but because you forced a goodbye your soul wasn't ready for. And here's the question that breaks the silence. If this was obedience, why does it feel like you lost more than a person? Why does it feel like you lost yourself? Because sometimes, Allah does ask us to walk away. But other times, that ache you're feeling, that pull back towards something you tried to bury, that lack of peace even after you did the right thing, it might be your fighter speaking. And maybe, just maybe, it's Allah saying, I never told you to let go yet. You try to ignore it. The way the world keeps echoing their name without saying it. You walk into a random cafe, and the same song is playing. Not your song, not theirs either, but the one that used to hum softly in the background, when everything still felt possible. Coincidence, right? Until you scroll through your phone, and their name flickers. In a shared contact. In a comment you weren't supposed to see. In a memory you never meant to open. And again you tell yourself, it's just my mind playing tricks on me. But deep down something feels off. Because it's not just old photos or favorite places. It's the random du'a that shows up in a video. The nasht you haven't heard in months. Suddenly playing that exact verse. The one that once made you cry. Because it reminded you of them. A scent in the hallway. A topic at a gathering. Even a stranger's laugh in the distance. It's everywhere. And no matter how strong you try to be, no matter how tightly you grip the idea of moving on, it's like Allah is letting the world whisper. Remember? Not to torment you. Not to test your willpower. But maybe, to awaken your soul. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Reminders aren't always tests. Sometimes, they're instructions. But instructions for what? That's the question that haunts you now. You don't want to go back. You don't want to fall into fantasy. You just want to understand. Why does everything lead back to them? Because real forgetting, real freedom, feels like air. Like lightness. Like peace. But this feels like running in circles. Not out of obsession. Not because you can't let go. But because maybe, just maybe, Allah hasn't closed this door yet. And if He hasn't closed it, who gave you permission to? You say you're moving on. You say it out loud. But your du'a still whispers something else. And that's where we go next. You told yourself it's done. You stopped mentioning their name in du'a. You said it was surrender. You said, Ya Allah, if they're not meant for me, remove them from my heart. And on the surface it sounds like closure. But here's what's really happening. They still show up. Not in your words, but in the silence between them. That moment in sujud, when you beg Allah to grant you what's best, and suddenly, a memory floods your chest. A feeling, a longing, not spoken but present. It's not obsession. It's not weakness. It's the part of you that still hopes, but is too afraid to name it out loud. Because you want to be strong. You want to sound obedient. You want to prove to yourself that you've let go. But if you're honest, there's always a pause after the du'a, a hesitation, like your heart is adding a footnote. Unless they're the one, and you bury it, you silence it, you try to call it nothing. But it's not nothing, because du'a is the one place you don't lie. You can't. When your head is on the ground, and your soul is laid bare in front of your Creator, whatever rises in that moment is real. So why are they still there? Why, even after all the letting go, do they live in the most honest part of your day? Some will say it's just your nafs, that you're clinging to false hope, that you're not strong enough. But maybe, just maybe, this isn't about weakness. Maybe it's about truth. Because most people don't stop making du'a because they've healed. They stop because they're scared. Scared it might actually come true. Scared that if Allah brings it back, you'll have to unwrite the story you've been telling yourself. That walking away was brave. That moving on was best. But what if it wasn't? What if you didn't stop praying because you let go, but because you're terrified of what it would mean if Allah opened that door again? So let me ask you something raw. Something you may never have said out loud. Are you asking Allah to remove them from your heart, or to bring them back without the pain? Because there's a difference. A massive one. One is closure. The other is a miracle you're too scared to name. And you'll never know which one you truly want until you stop censoring your du'a. Because Allah already knows what's in your heart. But you can't be guided until you do. You really tried. You gave your heart a lecture. You turned to podcasts, read threads, opened the Quran. You whispered the du'a that sounds like surrender. Ya Allah, I trust you. I'm ready for what's next. But somehow, every time you take a step forward, something pulls you back. Something doesn't sit right. The new person feels off. The opportunity feels rushed. The excitement feels forced. And worst of all, the peace you were promised still hasn't arrived. You're not obsessed. You're not waiting by the phone. You're not living in the past. But nothing after them feels real. Not deep. Not anchored. Like every attempt to move forward is just you walking further away from yourself. And here's the brutal truth. What if this isn't just bad timing? What if it's not just a test? What if it's Allah? What if He's the one slowing you down? Not to torment you, but to protect you? Protect you from making peace with a replacement that was never meant to hold your heart. Protect you from sealing a chapter He hasn't written the ending for yet. Because when something is truly written for you, it doesn't run from you. But when you run from it, Allah has His ways of bringing you back. Rasulullah once said, "The heart of the son of Adam is between two fingers of the most merciful. He turns it however He wills." That means, you can try all you want to force it, to forget, to convince your heart it's done. But if Allah knows that your soul still belongs somewhere else, He may not open another door until you face the one you closed in fear. And that's the hardest part to admit. It's easier to say, marriage just isn't for me. Maybe this is my test. I'm just not ready yet. Than to whisper the real reason. I think I walked away too soon. And now nothing feels right. Because He's slowing everything down. Not to punish you, but to protect you from making a choice that would have buried something sacred. So maybe this isn't about failure. Maybe this delay is mercy. Because the worst kind of heartbreak isn't when someone leaves. It's when you leave too early and spend years wondering if you shut a door Allah never told you to close. This is where you stop asking, why isn't anything working out? And start asking, is Allah holding me back from building something shallow over what was once sacred? Because not every delay is a wall. Some delays are doors, still waiting for your heart to come home. What if the person you keep remembering isn't just a person? What if they were a mirror of a version of you that you deeply miss? The way you smiled back then, the hope in your eyes, the way you made du'a like you really believed it would come true, the way your heart beat softer, not harder. Sometimes, you don't miss them. You miss who you were with them. You miss the clarity you had, the innocence, the softness, the kind of love that made you feel like maybe, just maybe, you were actually lovable. And when they left, or when you walked away, you didn't just lose them, you lost you. You became harder, more guarded. Your du'a started sounding more logical than heartfelt. You started praying like you were scared to hope again. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes, Allah places someone in your life, not to stay, but to wake you up, to remind you of who you really are, of what your heart sounds like, when it isn't numbed by noise, when it isn't diluted by distraction, when it still remembers Him. And when that person is gone, it's not them you chase, it's the light you tasted, in their presence. But that light never came from them. It came from Allah. Reflecting through a moment, He wrote for your growth. That's why you're still holding on. Because deep down, your soul remembers the feeling of being close to something real, of being close to Him. And maybe that's the final sign. You're not obsessed. You're not weak. You're not failing the test. You're just trying to get back to a moment in your life when your heart felt like it was alive again. So maybe it's not about holding on to them. Maybe it's about holding on to the part of yourself that still believes in that version of you. The version who dared to love purely, who trusted without games, who believed that what was written by Allah would not pass you by. Maybe the person was temporary, but the transformation was eternal. And if Allah still has you holding on, it's not to punish you. It's not to make you miserable. It's to remind you, the heart you had back then is still possible, still recoverable, still worth protecting. Because some connections don't return as people. They return as healing, as peace, as a version of you that finally understands what you loved in them was what He was awakening in you. And maybe that's enough.